really hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, and click the bell to be notified of more fantastic music content just like this.
Welcome to the Need to Know Music Show with me, Ronan McManus, here on Switchbox TV. And today I'm joined by a country singer whose story is one of a mixture of musical pedigree and hard work paying off. He's releasing new music this year from his fourth album, and he joins us now. Please welcome Jeremy McComb. How you doing?
Good morning, brother. How are you?
I'm very good. Very good. Yeah. It's been a strange old year so far. How have you found it personally? Where have you been? How have you been spending it? And kind of what's been your sort of take from it so far this year?
Well, we found that the best way to spend time was just getting nude in a field and starting a bonfire. So I've just been laying out under the stars.
That sounds all right.
Yeah, it's been weird. Everybody's tours kind of went away, and for me, thankfully, I just used it as a really creative time to write and get in the studio and finish this record, finish the deal over with Average Joe's, which is this amazing team that I'm with now. And so we use the time to the best of our ability, even though we weren't on the road like we normally are. Normally I spend a couple hundred days a year on the road. And so that kind of being cut down like it has been weird, but the good news is my kids know my name and my wife starting to remember me, so I'm pretty excited about that.
It does have its drawbacks.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, because your schedule is normally pretty hectic, gigging and just on the road, so yeah, it's a bit of a strange time. So did you spend some time like writing new stuff, or was it more finishing off the stuff that you already had kind of already going?
It was a little of both, really. We had written a bunch of stuff when we were over in Sweden last fall, and we're in the studio recording it and kind of finishing those songs up, and then writing some new stuff and getting this album ready to go, and kind of planning on the new single coming out. So it really kind of turned into a good time, a labor of love to just be in and being creative. And the good part was so many of my friends, everybody that we record these albums with, they were all here too, and they were all ready to work. So we got a lot of really good creative energy out of everybody. And it was just best case scenario for the weirdest of times.
So you're based in Nashville, are you?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, as far as, because I spoke to an Australian artist of the day, but her band were kind of scattered all around different parts of Australia. But I suppose if you're in Nashville, there's no shortage of musicians to work with and kind of people to be getting on with, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the nice part is everybody was out of work. Nobody was working. So when we were like, hey, let's get in the studio, the boys were like, absolutely, let's do it. So the creative energy was really, really high. And it was so wonderful just to have a bunch of humans in a room enjoying themselves and laughing and creating music together again. So
yeah, everyone's a bit like, can I let me check my busy schedule of sitting and looking at the wall,
Exactly.
And your wife's an actress, so she was presumably doing nothing as well, did all the filming and stuff as well.
Exactly, yeah. So her entire industry is still shut down. She's been doing a lot more of the audition stuff for like the voiceover work, a lot of like these like adult swim style cartoon kind of weird shit like that. But it's been really interesting, especially for them. I mean, I've always kind of been fortunate where even if the world shuts down, eventually you're going to be able to go play somewhere. But for actors and actresses and people like that, it's like you can't go act in people's backyards. Nobody's going to pay you to do that. So.
yeah. But I mean, you've got 3 kids. So what's that been like? Did you have full lockdown and stuff over there? Because we had that over here where no one was allowed to go anywhere, and I think it got a bit intense in some of the houses where, I mean, I've got 3 kids myself, but the oldest is a bit old, but he's a teenager now, so not so bad. But what age are your kids, and how was that sort of lockdown period?
Well, my daughter's 23, so she's in college.
Oh, okay.
But I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, both boys, both highly destructive Vikings. So he's added a room upstairs, and we're gonna let him out as soon as the world opens back up.
just shove some food under the door now and again, and then fine.
Yeah,
That's okay.
that's exactly right. Yeah, they're heathen, but they're great kids. And actually, we were like, my wife and I were kind of watching this thing. We were like, we're buying a trampoline with a net on it, and we're just gonna put them outside. Let them go beat each other up a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like a good option. So I want to talk a little bit about your sort of your musical beginnings, because I think we've got some parallels in our lives. Because I come from a musical family myself, where music was kind of the family business, and it's a similar sort of story for yourself. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Much like you, I'm a 6th generation musician, and so it was actually cool. My dad just sent me this photo book, and I've got a picture of, I don't know how many greats it would be, but he's a grandfather. 1913 in a band called the Hoodlum Band in the middle of the Northwest, and I'm like, damn. The acorn doesn't fall far from the tree, you know.
I was gonna say you've really pushed those boundaries.
Yeah, still a bunch of hoodlums in my family. You know, in my family, if I'm the best one off the branch, we're in some serious trouble. But yeah, a lot like yourself, come from a long line of musicians, and just fell in love with music so early. I remember watching my mom and my dad have this band called Crossfire, and my dad was an incredible he had an incredible ability to read a crowd, and just watching him control a room and control emotion. And I just remember being in school and being like, if it doesn't have strings on it, it just doesn't interest me at all. So
well, this is why I've been
relate.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that I always say about because my dad, one of the thing that I learned from him growing up, much more so than sort of technically how to sing or technically how to play, it was how to perform and how to hold yourself and how to do that. And he did it in everyday life. You know, he'd walk to the shops to get a pint of milk, and he'd be gone for 3 hours because he's telling stories and he's holding court in the shop, and he's like performing. You know, even doing day-to-day tasks. It was just kind of, he sort of taught us how to be on stage, and that was a massive head start on all the musicians around us, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that honing that, people talk about that 10,000 hour rule, and I mean, gosh, I probably had 10,000 hours in before I was 18, and I still didn't know what I was doing. So it was like, you start getting, like in your instance as well, you start getting into this 40, 50,000 hours where, I mean, you've kind of perfected. It's really the only place I feel comfortable in anything is standing on a stage, and a lot like your dad, I'll tell my wife I'm going to be gone for 45 minutes and I'm holding court at the grocery store. Center of attention. I think it's a curse for all of us, but
I think it's that we were taught, to stop rehearsing so much and get out there and do gigs. You never learn as much as you do on the actual stage. A gig is worth 100 rehearsals. So what sort of age were you out there performing and doing stuff?
I started playing at clubs at 13. I had a 50s band. I had a hard time finding musicians in my junior high school of guys that wanted to play 50s music. I was a little.
You were in Idaho, right? You were in Idaho, is that right?
Yeah, I was in Idaho, and I just thought, I had this band called the Class of 56, and I was like, we should dress like it's 1955. We should, do songs of nothing but the 50s. And so I was walking around in and we had no money. So I remember going to the Goodwill and buying these old, like I was wearing hand-me-down Wranglers, and then I'd go to the Goodwill store and I would buy these old like leisure suits, like 70. I didn't even know what year they were from. So I'm popping my collars on these 70s as a 13-year-old, and then wondering why women didn't want anything to do with me.
That's where the guitar comes in, my friend.
Yeah, that's why I spent so much time alone in my room trying to figure out how to write songs. And And, so 13 is when I started in clubs, and then ended up quitting school at 16 to play full time. So I've been doing it. This is like 22 years for me on the road.
Wow. I mean, what year were you when you were started to write music and started to not so much firstly, when did you start writing music, start writing songs? And then secondly, how long before you wrote a song you thought this is actually going somewhere? Because you obviously, normally your early stuff's sketchy at best,
Yeah.
but then you kind of get to the point where you go, wow, this is actually quite good. And what was your development in terms of that? Like, how long did that take?
I started writing, I probably, like most people do, of her name was Amber, so it was all songs about Amber, and getting my heart stomped on. And then once I started playing in clubs and really just trying to do this as much as I could, and playing 150 shows a year, even at like 16. I think the first time I started to write stuff I really liked, I think I was 18 or 19 years old, and now the songs weren't about Amber, they were about other girls that were. It's just common theme. And now when I look back on it, I dated all these terrible women, and then I realized, what's the common denominator between all of them? And I'm like, oh shit, it's me. I'm the problem. There's 4 albums out there right now that says it's them, but it's really me.
So you sort of, you seem to be drawn towards storytellers, and storytelling has kind of been something that you've always kind of done. What were your influences in that respect? And and what was your sort of development with the storytelling side of things? How did you find that came out in your writing?
Well, I fell in love, we didn't, when I was a kid, like, we never had any money or anything for vacations or anything like that. So I would just kind of take these trips on my dad's record player. My dad had this great record collection of everybody from the Animals to Jim Croce and the Marshall Tucker Band. Of course, Willie and Merle Haggard, like every country musician. But I really fell in love with like Croce. And I remember just sitting there and going through all these stories that were so descriptive of whether it was, Rapid Roy or it was, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, and all these songs that just told these great stories. And then I fell in love kind of with the working man anthems too, like the Animals and guys that weren't, incredibly attractive people. They were just great artists. And that really drew me in more, when it's like, oh, you can look like, the Animals and have a career doing this. So I really fell in love with the storytelling, and then Roger Miller and so many of these great Nashville songwriters, which, going back to Tennessee Ernie Ford. I'm trying to remember who wrote 16 Tons with Tennessee Ernie Ford, but I just love those, Big John by Jimmy Dean, and anything that told a story and got you somewhere. And then it was the Marshall Tucker Band, and then it was Willie, and then as I got older, it was guys like Sean Mullins and Matt Nathanson. I think there's some really great. I think there's some, Townes Van Zandt. And there's just so many, Elvis Costello. All those kinds of amazing artists who have a story to tell, and where it was all about the art, and it was all about the connection, and not so much whether it would be a hit or wouldn't be a hit. And I've never focused on that. I remember Neil Young in an interview one time just going like, man, I've been famous and not famous so many times, I don't even care. It's just about the art.
Yeah,
First,
I think
long may you run, or whatever.
What's that? Listen, say like something like Bad Leroy Brown. There's the storyline there, but there's also, it's the imagery of how it's so descriptive and so efficient in how it sort of lyrically is just that sort of thing is always fascinating. You sort of listen to a verse and it said so much more than just those 4 lines that are there.
Yes.
And there's so many artists like that, which is just so, you could pack so much in just the way it's said, and the lyrically is amazing. It's just amazing. And I can see how that could capture you. You know, it did me. So
yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. Well, and then guys like Dire Straits, and the way that Dire Straits would take these beautiful, amazing pop, catchy melodies, but still have the meat to the stories. You know, of even as poppy and as, like, if you listen to the Walk of Life, or you know, you listen to some of the Lyle Lovett stuff, where it's like it doesn't sound deep until you get into the song, and you're like, oh man,
sort of conversational, isn't it? Sort of like,
yes,
so effortless. Yeah.
Yeah,
It still does the job.
Masters of it. Masters of it.
But you've I mean, most of your releases you've done yourself. Have you done sort of just gigging and DIY releasing?
Yes.
And sort of, what was it like getting the first album recorded and getting that kind of down and getting that out there? Was that something that that you'd worked hard towards, or is it something that you just, because I know that the first album that me and my band did when I first started out was just kind of an album we did so that we could sell something at gigs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't actually much of an artistic sort of till the next few became that, but that wasn't how it started. For you, was it much? Were you a gig musician selling stuff in the venues, or was it always something that you wanted to do artistically, or was it a bit of both?
I think it was a little bit of both. The first record we ever did on our own, I had this band in my hometown called Trace County, and we did a record. You know, pressed 1,000 of them, and just like, oh man, if we could just sell 1,000 of these things, you know, and went out and toured on that, and built a great fan base with it. But the songs were still pretty artistic. I didn't really fall into. I feel like I started with the art in mind, and then when I got my first deal, we put a record out called My Side of Town. And that was like my first introduction into the major music business. And I go back and I listen to the record now, and I'm like, I just tried to sound like, every song sounded like a different hero of mine that I wanted. So half the, you know, one part of the record sounds like Steve Earle, and the other part sounds like, you know, Radney Foster, and it's just all around. And I look back now where I was like, I really wish that I would have found more of a clear path line.
That's interesting it's interesting to, you can almost document all the different influences that were coming in, and then you sort of finding your own voice is actually documented. That's kind of unique in itself, or kind of, you know, it's kind of maybe not unique, but it's kind of interesting, surely, to sort of, you can sort of track that path.
Yeah, and I'm proud of the record, but I also wish, like, you know, I guess hindsight's 2020, where you look back and you go, I wish I would have taken more of a artistic stand on it to really make a stamp. But like you said, it really was kind of the beginning of a roadmap to knowing exactly who you are, which is, you know, over the last 5 years especially, where you just start to go, man, to hell with what anybody else thinks. We're just going to make the best art that we can. I'm going to write the best songs I can, and here's kind of me and what I do, and people are either into it or they're not into it. But we're not chasing you know, accolades or anything. I just want to make art that matters, and art that brings, you know, showcases itself with humility and gratitude, and some reverence for the people that I grew up listening to, and also something that in 10 years, hopefully you'll be able to listen to it and go, man, it still stands up.
I mean, I think also the amount of gigs you're talking about, the amount of dates you're doing over the course of a year, or even the course of a week or a month, to have the headspace to kind of stand back and go, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, or even have the chance to think. I mean, that's one of the things I suppose that's come from this lockdown period this year so far. Everyone's being forced to kind of take a step back. Yeah. When you're in the throes, I mean, I was in a band for 15, nearly 20 years, doing 5-6 gigs a week, and I listened back to some of the albums that we recorded there, and we just we weren't able to think through. I mean, Did you find that? Did you think, looking back on it, do you think that you'd do things differently, or is it just kind of capture the time, capture the moment?
Yeah, I think so. The last few records that I've done, I've been really, really proud of. I felt like the headspace was right. You know, I feel like sometimes you get in to the studio just because you feel like you need to make a record. We're like, it's been 4 years, I got to put something out. And you know this as well as I do. When you're doing that many shows, when you're playing 5-6 nights a week, it's hard to sit and write, and it's hard to sit and get your shit together enough to like go put together a real record or a real vision for something, because you're just constantly working, you know. And
Yeah.
and I did that too, where, you know, you're just you're playing to live, and you're trying to hit all your bills, and you're just out busting your ass in clubs every night of the week trying to connect. And at some point you have to sleep, and at some point you have to have a life, and at some point you have to let your voice recover. And after your sixth night, you know, in a venue, the last thing you want to do is go sit and try to write a song. And so I definitely went through those periods. I have a record called Leap and the Net Will Appear, which I tried to produce myself. And it's one of those times where I was just, you know, you look back and you go, it could have been so much better, but I just wasn't in the right headspace. And these last few things, I had a record called FM, which I was really proud of how that came out. I felt like people who had listened to me through my career could see the growth, hopefully, in that. And then going from FM to this new project with my new team is night and day. And so I was really, really excited for people to hear the growth, to see the growth, to see the new show live, where people would be able to not only hear the growth, but see it and see the maturity level change and the approach change.
I saw that you'd quit drinking, and that's another parallel with me. I stopped just over 3 years ago.
Wow.
And it almost feel like it was a new start for me in terms of headspace and all those things you're talking about, focus, knowing what you want to say, being more in control of how you want to say it. Almost felt like that whirlwind life kind of calmed all of a sudden. I kind of had more of a control over how I could sing as well, and how I could perform. How did you feel that the benefits you got, or how did you feel your life changed from making that decision? And congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. And to you as well. I did like a couple years ago, and it wasn't really something where I'm like, man, I'm going to quit drinking. I was just like, I just need to make some changes to better myself. And I'd like to be around, you know. I think especially when you're really young, you go, well, I'm never going to make 40 anyways.
You know, live fast, die young. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'm never going to hit 30. And then you hit 30 and you're like, oh shit, if I don't start taking care of this, this is going to be a real issue. And waking up and not being like, you know, we've all done it on the road and have a bottle of whiskey, you know, and having fun with your friends. And then the waking up the next morning and have to do it again, but you're hoarse and you can't get through it. So then you got to have 2 or 3 shots to try to get your voice back to where you need it to play. And I just kind of got tired of the constant. I have kind of a problem with authority anyway. And so when something begins to run your life where it's like, man, if we don't grab a couple shots, I'm not gonna be able to sing because my throat hurts. And just getting healthy, getting a mindset of, I changed kind of a life philosophy and really started studying some life philosophy stuff I was interested in, and quitting drinking and doing jujitsu and training. And I think it's just made me a better human all the way around. And that's really the goal now at this point, is just trying to find a better version of me, and not letting the people who work so hard with me on this team down, you know, just because you want to go out and have some cocktails. So, and I was worried in the beginning, to be honest, about being able to connect with people who were drinking, I never wanted to come off like, I quit drinking, so you should all quit drinking. you know, where for me, it's just my problem, you know, it was something where I ran into it, and all my friends, you know, our guys on the road, like if they want to have cocktails after the show, I don't give a shit. It doesn't bother me at all. And I think the people that are standing in front of us in the crowd, if I want them drinking, I want them having a good time. That's why we're there. So, you know, I just think it was just a personal choice, and it wasn't something that I've ever tried to push on anybody else. It's not even a belief system I have, you know, where it's like people should or shouldn't. I think people should enjoy themselves to the fullest extent of their life as long as they're happy and healthy, and you know.
Yeah, I sort of have this thing where I sort of say, look, I'm not anti-drinking. I'm anti-drinking for me,
Right.
but I'm not anti-drinking for everyone else. And if you don't have to give it up, don't give it up. You know.
Yeah, have a blast.
If you can have those few drinks and then go home and you can do that, then by all means do it. I can't do that. That's fine. That's okay. I'm cool with that. You know.
You and me need to do it together.
I know this is a really. If I look in the mirror, it's like me with a hat on.
It's awesome.
I wanted to talk about the new record now, and the kind of and about you signed to Average Joe's. What came first? Did you have the album first, or did you sign the deal first and then make the album? How did that work?
No, we came back from doing festivals over in Sweden last year, and we had written a bunch of songs while we were staying over there.
Tolstoy's house or something, is this right?
Yeah, we were in Tolstoy's house.
Tell us about that. First of all, tell us about that.
Dude, I met this guy in Wisconsin, of all places, and we were doing a listening room show, and he said, "Hey man, I've got this place in Sweden. You guys should come over." And I'm kind of I'm an immediate yes guy. It drives my wife crazy, but like if you were to say, "Hey man, why don't you come over to London and let's go out, we'll do this," I'd be like, "All right man, let's just do it." I kind of say yes and then figure the details out along the way. And I think that's helped me a lot in my career. But he said, "You should come to Sweden and come write at our house." And so I said yes. And I brought my buddy Dan Olsen from the band Sack Alliance with me. And he introduced us to a couple of Swedish songwriters over there, James Michel and Linnea Lundberg. And we get to Stockholm, and he drives us in this little ass car out to the middle of this dock where we get in a dinghy. There's not even a light on the boat, and there's like shipping container ships going past you. I feel like the pirates in the Captain Phillips movie, where like you're in this tiny ass boat, and he took us over to this little granite rock island and walk up a goat trail to this dry farmhouse on top of a rock overlooking the Baltic Sea. And we walked into the house. There's this big, thing of Leo Tolstoy books. And I was like, big Tolstoy fan, huh? And he just said, "Well, it's my wife's grandfather, and this is one of their family houses." And I'm like, "You got to be shitting me." So it was really an amazing experience. And we wrote this. We came back, and I went into the studio with my producer and just my drummer. He's a really good friend of mine. He just did the new Marty Stewart record. His name's Nick Gibbons. And we just were going to demo these songs, but they turned into something so much more. And we had been chatting with Average Joe's over here for a minute. And there was just no other place for what I do that, and we had multiple conversations throughout the years with people, but there was just never a right thing, and it never felt right. It always felt kind of music businessy and kind of slimy. And then when I met everybody over at Average Joe's, you just kind of find this home, and I was like, these are my people. So I'm kind of one, when I get on a team or I get on, like, I like to beat the drum and fly the flag and drive the bandwagon. And
that's important though. That's important to be all in, I think.
Yeah. And everybody over here has shown that too, which has been amazing. So you've got a group of people who are all doing things that have never been done in the music business for the last decade of, unprecedented stuff on YouTube, on digital service providers, the things that they've done to push genres that didn't exist before, with Colt Ford and the country rap thing, which I had never even heard of. Obviously, I'm from the Northwest, so the Southeast to the Northwest, there's a little bit of of a difference.
Yeah.
And I've always loved Colt, but to see how the team formulated this and really created a genre. And with what we do, I don't fall into anything really when it comes to format. So they go, well, what are you? And I'm not what country music is on the radio now, and we're not red dirt country. And so we started talking about exactly what we were, and so we've kind of fallen into this, I guess you would call it, like a frontier rock thing. And it's kind of a really cool middle ground. I think that there's so many great artists that fall into it, whether it be John Mellencamp or Lyle Lovett or the Eagles, and Jeff Crosby, Reckless Kelly, these guys that don't really fall into these niches. And so
Yeah.
shows got that immediately. And so I just couldn't be prouder to be over here.
That's fantastic. So what was the recording of the new album like? How did that go? I mean, what was that like, that experience?
It was amazing. It went so fast, and everybody was just so connected to the songs, which I've never really had that either. You get in the studio and you've got studio players who are doing 18,000 sessions a week, and they're playing on everybody's records. And we've got Saul Philcox, he's from London, and he played guitar on every song on this record. But I think we got lucky that they hadn't been doing 18,000 sessions a week. And so when they came in,
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
everybody was just so in tune with the songs and so creative, and spent so much more time on an album than I ever have. And so it just, it felt like a band. It felt like we'd been together forever. And it's exactly that feeling that, I've always wanted. I look at these documentaries like the Tom Petty documentary or the Eagles documentary, like, God, I want to be like that. I want to have that group of guys. And so it felt like that in the studio, kind of creating this stuff.
With the songs, did you feel like I've just been reading a bit about them. I've sent over a bit about the new songs, although only one of them is released so far, but reading about them, there seems to be some real great little stories and connections with the songs. Were you excited about the new bunch of songs?
Yeah, excited, super nostalgic. I don't know why, but everything for me lately has just been looking back and kind of looking forward at the same time, and trying to kind of connect the two. We play so many fairs and festivals where you've got just this crowd of people in front of you that are all going. The way that festivals are now, it's strange. I never experienced it before, but this is what people plan their vacations around, where they'll go out with all their friends, and they'll get 15 camping spots, and they'll put up all their tents, and they'll put up their fifth wheels, and they've got their flags flying, and they've got their favorite music playing, and they're drinking beer, and they're playing, cornhole or horseshoes or whatever the hell they're doing out there. And this is how they're connecting. And so with like a song like Cotton's Getting High, it just reminded me so much of that, and of growing up around pallet bonfires and sweaters, trying to get the hot girl across the fire to pay attention to you. And it never worked out for me, but some of my friends from what I hear, it did.
There's a great sorry, go on, carry on.
Oh no, it's just that's kind of where it all came from, was just like this connection to the way that people are consuming music and the way that people are connecting with it. And I think on a much deeper level than I've seen, where people are really, really loyal and ingrained to the music that they're following.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's getting harder to discover new music, and people finding it harder to I think once people found somebody, they really feel like they're theirs. And I think that's that sort of connection is actually one of the positives maybe to come out of what is quite a difficult music business to exist within. But yeah, so that's certainly something that
I think it goes like this too. People are getting access to the people that they really love more than they ever have. So if they're like, man,
It's
I
true.
love
Yeah,
Ronan, and
absolutely.
they can go watch your show every week, and then they can go listen to all your records, and then they can go see you live. I mean, they feel like they know you in a way that you've never been able to do before. So instead of getting people to go, hey, you know, can you sign this? And now it's more like, hey, man, can you help us move a couch? Do you have a truck we could use?
Well, I wanted to talk about a couple of songs, particularly that really caught my eye when I was looking at the list of new songs, and Under Glass was one that really kind of leapt out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wrote that with my friend Rick Huckabee. His dad was a Hall of Fame basketball coach at Marshall University in West Virginia. And he's got this picture framed on the wall of a little 8-year-old Rick Huckabee, you know, blonde-headed kid standing with the Marshall basketball team, like these giant men, like 6'8", and you got little Rick Huckabee in the middle of it. And I said, man, what happened to all these dudes? And he was like, oh, this guy, you know, went to jail. This guy went to the NBA. This guy died in a car wreck. And he was kind of taking me through it. And I said, isn't it incredible that the only place that team all lives together anymore, and the only place that an 8-year-old Rick Huckabee exists with those men anymore is in that picture. And so in that picture, everybody's still happy, everybody's still alive, everybody's still young, everybody's standing in the sunshine laughing. And that's the only place in the universe that that moment exists anymore. And we just kind of started talking about that, and it morphed into this Under Glass thought of how it is with relationships when you look back at old relationships, and you always see the happy pictures. You never see the pictures of I hate you, kiss my ass, get out of here. nobody takes a picture in those moments for whatever reason. So,
but that's just one of those moments where you think that's a song. That's a really, and it's one of those. It's a really unique angle on something that everyone experiences that, you know.
Yes, and I was really proud to write that song, and I'm really, really excited for people to hear the way that it came out.
Fantastic. The other one I wanted to ask you about was 13 Steps, because I mean, you come from a tour around Folsom Prison, and the whole story about death row and the significance of the number 13. Tell us a little bit about this now.
That whole experience blew my mind. My friend has worked at Folsom Prison for 28 years. He's getting ready to retire, and we were out touring in California, and he called me and said, "Man, you're coming through Sacramento in a couple of weeks, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I could set up like a once in a lifetime private tour of Folsom Prison if you want to do it." And I'm like, "Absolutely." Everybody thinks the same thing when you think of Folsom Prison. Everybody thinks of Johnny Cash. And then you get there and you realize that Johnny is not there. It's just a prison, and it was terrifying and eye-opening, and none of the dudes are in their cells. Like, all the cells are just open. And so they're walking me through there, and with some pretty scary dudes, and they took me down into death row, where they had hung 93 people, and they were telling me about why the doors were there's 13 doors, and they've got holes drilled into them because there's still, even to this day, there's no air conditioning in this prison. So they drilled holes in the doors so these guys wouldn't like suffocate in there and die when the sun was beating down on that side of the prison. And as they would hang you, you would move to the next cell up until it got to be your turn. Wow. And there was a rumor of the guy that was doing the hangings that he would sing a song while he was getting these people ready. So they would take him from their cell up 13 stairs to a rope that had been stretched for 13 days that had 13 knots in it. And I just said, why is everything 13? And he said, well, it's symbolic of the people who put you here. It's 12 for the jury and it's 1 for the judge. And I was like, holy shit.
That just seems unnecessarily detailed, doesn't it? It sort of
It
seems
is
like,
crazy.
wow.
And
That's,
at night,
that's really rubbing it in, isn't it?
I never thought about it like that, but a little bit, yeah. Here's Jerry, here's Doug, here's Dave.
Sorry, bust dark sense of humor there. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. It's great.
So, I wanted to ask you about your career highlight. What's the sort, when you look back over the sort of everything you've done since you first stepped on the stage, is there anything that really sticks out to you where you look back at something really sort of a real proud moment?
There have been a lot. The first time that my parents came out when I was tour managing Larry the Cable Guy, you know, it was like sold out arena tour. Parents came out. That was a proud moment. Getting to work with Paul Riddle from the Marshall Tucker Band, and he's become like a second father to me. So that was something that was just unbelievable. There's been so many things, you know, I got to take a hit off of a joint with Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Ray Price, which doesn't happen very often.
This mic drop moment there, and that's just bang.
They were like, as it came around, I'm like, I don't even smoke this shit, but I'm not going to pass this up. So,
I'm not saying no to these guys.
Yeah. So that was an awesome experience. We did 2 of Willie's picnics down in Fort Worth when I was with Cable Guy, and the second one was where we got to hop up on the bus and we were chatting. Christopherson was up there, Ray Price was up there, Larry the Cable Guy was up there, and Willie was up there. And as it does on Willie's bus, things start being passed around, and you just kind of partake and and go with it.
Yeah, because I didn't even mention the tour managing Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, that was yours. And you worked in radio, did a whole sort of other things outside of music over the years as well. I mean, it seems I don't know how you packed it all in, but what was that like, that experience on the road there?
It was amazing watching one of your friends go from being like, you know, a somewhat he was successful, but a somewhat popular comedian where you're an opener for Jeff Foxworthy to a superstar in Pixar movies, and he can't walk into Walmart anymore. It was insane to watch that transformation for him, and just to see how your life is upended by that. I think it kind of pulled back the curtain for me a little bit on celebrity, where, you know, how big do you want to be? Successful anonymity is pretty amazing, where you can go be a rock star at your show and you can sell out your venue and then sign autographs afterwards, sell merch, get on the bus, drive 300 miles away and go buy underwear at Target, and nobody cares who you are. That's a pretty wonderful thing. And so I never understood, you know, like you would hear these stories of, oh, this celebrity put a Starbucks in his basement. And I think people look down on that for whatever reason, of like, oh God, how much money do you need? You're putting Starbucks in your house. And then once I saw that happen with Cable Guy, I was like, well, people have to do that because he can't go to Starbucks or he can't go to a movie theater. So they build these crazy theaters, and they kind of become a prison of the character that they played and of the success that they've had. So watching that, I think, just opened my eyes to a lot of things and how I wanted to go about doing stuff, and the stuff how I wanted to be and how I didn't want to be. And then just learning every aspect of the business. I wanted to be in the music business, whether my recording career worked out or not. So that is cross training, you know, learning more things, being a sponge and taking in as much as you could.
Well, it seems to be working out for you, because it's like, you know, you've done so much stuff before, you know, now you've got this new record coming out, you've got the new record deal with So at Home, and it's sort of everything that seems to sort of come together. And obviously he's quitting drinking, and everything seems to be you seem to be in a really good place now. I mean, how does it feel now to be in this place? You feel like you found your feet, and you kind of in in a really good place.
Yeah, I feel like you finally get to the spot where you've been aiming to be, you know, just as a human, just as a mindset where I don't let things bother me. I don't get stressed out. I don't get worried about stuff. I'm quick to apologize if I screw something up, and just keeping my head in exactly what I'm doing, being present in the moment and being obsessed with what I love, and not letting bullshit or drama come into your life, you know, and control your life. I think that was probably the biggest change for me, where it was like I cut out everything and everyone around me who wasn't demanding the best out of me. So everyone who surrounds me now, from my manager to my record label to my friends to the people that I train with, they all demand the best out of you. And if they didn't, then, you know, that would be a problem. So I think it's a great thing to have people that know your worth and know what you can deliver, and then not accepting anything less than that. And then vice versa, you know, you can be that support system for them too. So it's just been a wonderful journey, and I'm really proud of where I'm at now.
Sounds like such a positive message, and I think a lot of people will get a lot from that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We always do a recommendation part of the show where we ask you to recommend somebody that people should check out. It can be someone new, or it can be someone that's really influenced you over the years. What would be your recommendation?
I would say Sean Mullins would be the guy that I would tell people to go listen to. He had a record, he had a hit called Lullaby in the late 90s, which everybody knows. But if you haven't dug into the discography of what he does, from his first record, which was called Soul's Core, to his last record, which was called My Stupid Heart, he's absolutely prolific and totally underrated. And just somebody I've always looked up to as a songwriter and as a singer, and as a storyteller. He's absolutely incredible. So Sean Mullins, I would highly recommend to anyone.
Fantastic. We'll put the link to all the stuff so people can go and check that out. Awesome. But just wanted to say thank you for joining us. And you do a podcast, don't you?
Called
Too Dumb to Quit. So people can go check that out. We'll put a link to that in the thing. We didn't even talk about that, but because you're just doing too much stuff, man.
I'm just trying to keep the wheels from falling off, you know, that's all.
So there's we can check out the podcast, which is basically interviewing different people in different walks of life. Is that right?
Yeah,
so
just talking really about people in difficult industries, which you need to be on my podcast.
Oh, 100%. I'm there. I'm there anytime. You name the day. I'm there. So listen, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on the sobriety, and congratulations on the new record and the record deal, and so good to see you in such a good place right now, and just wish you all the best. And hopefully, if this virus ever goes away and you can get on a plane to London, you can come and see us and sing us a few songs in person.
We're planning on it next year.
Fantastic. Well, let us know anyway. All right. Brilliant. Thanks, Jeremy McComb. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.